right, am I live? All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗶𝗸. I'm with SAP, and I'm here with 𝗬𝗲, my colleague, and we're here today to talk to you guys about starting your business AI transformation and how to innovate with SAP BTP and specifically AI. I do want to say that this session today is not an executive overview. We actually are both very technical. Our propellers spin. And so therefore, our goal today is to try to hurt your brains a little bit by going through and talking a little bit about where SAP is going with our AI strategy, specifically on top of Microsoft Azure. And so, we're excited to present today. Just in terms of introductions, a little bit about myself. I actually have been with SAP about 4 years, but I actually spent 15 years with Microsoft. I've also had startups where I built some significant internet scale systems on top of Azure. So I do have an Azure background, and which I think is helpful when we're talking about SAP AI and how we work with all that. I actually joined Microsoft in 1996. And for those of you that remember back that far, I did lots of demonstrations of Microsoft 𝗬𝗀𝗸𝗻 when I started my career. And for those of you that know what that is, I can only say one thing: you're old, because I am. And so we're here today to talk about BTP and what's going on with AI. And so what I'm going to do, and I also work, by the way, with a lot of our largest customers globally. I'm in a global role, and I help our customers think through what their hyperscaler strategy is when it comes to SAP and BTP. So with that, I'll turn it over to 𝗬𝗲. 𝗬𝗲, take it away.
Thank you. My name is Siva. I'm part of SAP's product engineering organization. I'm part of the BTP engineering team. So my responsibility is working with our hyperscaler partners, building architectures and adoption programs, and also kind of go back to our product teams to make sure whatever we hear from our partners and customers are also taken care in the product as well. So very hands-on. So I'm based here in Palo Alto, not here, but in US, in Palo Alto. We have a team there that work closely with our hyperscalers. Right. So today, what I wanted to do is I want to just give you an overview, probably a technical overview of what SAP's AI strategy is about, and then kind of dig a little deeper into the other services in BTP on what you could do for building your extensions with SAP Build and integration, data and analytics, and how that ties actually with the AI strategy that we are rolling out across the globe, right? So this is SAP's overall portfolio, right? Business technology platform is the foundation of everything that we do. And this is the centerpiece of our clean core strategy, right? So we are encouraging customers not to go modify their S4 and ERP systems directly. Hey, keep the core clean so that every rollout that we do, every innovation that we push, kind of you are immediately able to consume, and keep all the extensions on the side in the BTP so that you'll be able to kind of consume those innovations. And it's the same platform that we use internally, right? So it's not just what we recommend our customers. BTP is the platform for our developers to build applications. So all our industry solutions, our LOB applications, be it SuccessFactors, Concur, Ariba, all of these products actually use our tools to build the applications and integrations and everything. So on top of it, we have our ecosystem partners. We encourage our partners also to use our BTP tools so that they could also build tools that could be readily consumable by you. And overarching all of this is our AI portfolio. I'll double click on the AI portfolio in a minute, but inside a BTP, if you look at the bottom stack, it's like the app development tools, everything that you need to build, low code, pro code. We'll get into the details. Automation as well, business process automation, integration, data analytics, where DataSphere is the centerpiece there, and data, and then intelligence, like the AI part of it. So what's there inside AI, right? So there are two pieces within AI when we talk about our AI strategy, right? Embedded AI. Embedded AI is all about AI inbuilt into the software that we provide you, right? All business softwares, so that you don't have to go build it by yourself, right? So we have embedded AI within all our LOB applications as well as our S4, right? So yesterday, if you had attended Kai's session, you would have seen the 100+ embedded AI use cases that we have rolled out. Today, it's already available in the system, and there are more that are already in the pipeline that we are going to roll out. Right, so that's embedded AI. On top of that is Jewel. So Jewel is our co-pilot that spans across all the tools that we provide. So it's not limited to S4, not limited to SuccessFactors. It's there everywhere. So it can understand what you said, and then the continuity of across the system is also maintained. It knows your data, and it's very personal to your business, right? But what we are going to talk about today is about the customized AI. It's great, SAP is providing everything or as much as possible out of the box, but then where do you build the differentiation, right? Where do you kind of go ahead and build your custom applications that's very unique for your business, and how to differentiate and then kind of get the edge? So that's where the customized AI part of it comes on, and the AI foundation plays a critical role in building your custom apps. First, the AI foundation provides you access to all the major LLM models that's out there, right? So we take care of all the maintenance, everything. It's fully managed by SAP. You don't have to have any contract whatsoever with any of these hyperscalers or any of these model providers. The AI foundation provides everything for you. So beyond the access to the AI foundation or AI LLM services, we have a lot more inbuilt into the AI foundation. For example, business data and context, right? So without data, without your data, this AI application would not make any sense. AI is all about data. It'll start hallucinating, right? So it wouldn't give you any meaningful result. So the business data context is where we have introduced two tools. One with respect to the vector engine, where you'd be able to bring your unstructured data together with your structured data. Number two is our graph engine, which actually represents your structured data in a graphical format, in a graph structure, so that you would be able to kind of pull and retrieve that information very quickly. So it's powerful. I'm going to have more details on this on the later slide. But LLM service is great, access to data is great, but then you need to have a full-fledged lifecycle management so that you can start maintaining these services, so that you can roll it out to your teams, right? So that's where the lifecycle management tools of the foundation that comes into play. AI foundation is an umbrella term that kind of encompasses all of these services that I was walking you through. Let's get into the AI services, specifically the service that we call Generative AI Hub, or GenAI Hub in short, right? So this has all the tools that is very specifically needed for building a GenAI-based application, for, in short, RAG application. Starting with access, this is the one that actually manages the access. You can pick and choose any model that you want, right? So if you want to use Azure OpenAI models like GPT 3.5, 4, 4.0, and all the upcoming models, or if you want to also go with Gemini Pro for whatever use cases that you have preferences for, or Anthropic, or the IBM Granite model, or the Meta models, right? All these models are available to you, and SAP takes care of it. It's fully managed. You don't have to worry about scaling it up and down and everything, right? Second, before you start the development, you can explore, right? There is a playground that is available right within the GenAI Hub, where you could go put in the prompt and see how the response is. This is a fully managed and a controlled environment. None of the data that you put into this ever reaches kind of the LLMs. Even if it does reach LLM, we have an agreement with them to make sure that it's never persisted or reused and for training and other things. But you would be able to play within this environment before you start building it out, right? A very safe environment. Once you have a confidence that, yes, LLM can solve your use case, then comes the orchestration. Orchestration is a really powerful tool. It kind of brings everything together. So the grounding, the masking, the prompt engineering, as well as content filtering. If you do not want your product IDs or customers' names or addresses and all that stuff ever going to the LLM, you would be able to leverage this masking tool that kind of masks everything. And then when the response comes back from the LLM, it puts right back in. So you, as a user, or your users, would never know that the sensitive information was blocked, right? So all of this is pretty awesome in terms of all the tools that you have, everything in one place, and it is fully managed. When you talk about orchestration and grounding, you don't have to, if you have one document, 10 documents, thousands of documents, you don't have to care about it. You would be able to kind of easily scale it up and down as per your use case, right? Along with that, governance, if you have compliances that you need to take care of it, it does help you with the compliances. And then trust and security, right? So this is one of the most important part of it. It is secure by default. And we have made sure that people who don't have access in your S4 system and other LOB systems would never get access inside your GenAI Hub, right? So all that security and everything, when you try to reach out to your SAP system, are still kept intact. Now, what else we got? HANA Vector Engine, right? Before I go into the HANA Vector Engine, how many of you here have experience with building a GenAI application, right? Okay, yeah. So you probably would have heard about this concept called vector and embedding, right? So I probably spend 30 seconds explaining what vector and embedding actually mean, because that's one of the common questions that I get from my customer before whenever I talk about HANA Vector Engine. So vectorization is the process of converting text documents or text, right, into numbers in a way that it is easily searchable. Simple, right? So if you have a leave policy document, right, and that document would get converted into series of multidimensional numbers or vectors, right? So that when a user asks a question, can I take a day off on a particular day, even though there is the word day off, it never existed in your policy document, whether it's just leave and holidays is what exists in your policy document, it understands the relationship and the similarity and kind of retrieves the section that is relevant for the policies, right? So that's what the vector engine provides. It's really powerful, right? And the most awesome part is it runs on the same database that you have the data. You don't have to kind of have a separate database for vector and separate database for your application, right? It runs on the same database. You would be able to easily, kind of mix both of the data sets to kind of manage the whole database much more easily. And the other awesome thing is we have our own SAP embedding model, right? Let me explain what that means. Remember I talked about like how we are converting the text into numbers, right? There is something called an embedding model, text embedding model that actually does the conversion. When you use a generic text embedding model, it does its best, but it's not perfect. It doesn't understand all the SAP details. Let me give you an example. ATP check, right? Availability to promise, we all know about it. In an SAP world, it's very, very common. But an embedding model would not know whether that is it's referring to a tennis, right? ATP, Association of Tennis Professionals, or is it availability to promise? So when you use SAP's embedding model, it does understand all the SAP three-letter acronyms and all the nuances, and it knows the right section of the document to pick up, right? So that's incredibly powerful, and it is also available within the HANA engine so that you don't have to go figure out what are all the different engines that are out there and what is best for you. In our lab exercise, when we did the measurement, we were able to perform like 45% more accurate results compared to the other leading embedding model. So this is one of the biggest reasons why BTP might be the best for your business, SAP-specific business applications. The next one is the knowledge graph, right? We talked about unstructured data like documents, PDFs, policies, and everything. What about the structured data, right? how can we pull that information based on a natural language query, right? So what we do based on with the knowledge graph is we provide a way for you to represent your structured data. We call that ontology, right? You can define the ontology for the data set, and it automatically makes the connections so that when you try to do a graph rag, it automatically retrieves the data for you. Okay, so let me give you an example again here. In our SAP system, in the sales order world, right? So you have your quotations, your contracts, and all these documents related. And then each sales order will have a sold to party link to it, right? Now, if somebody is asking a question about a specific sales order, right, on that particular customer, probably you'd be able to get the answer. But if the follow-up question is more about how about my other sales orders, right? That question need to know that this customer node that is attached to the sales order can go refer to the other sales orders and kind of pull it up. This is the node-to-node connection that we are talking about. It's incredibly powerful. It is available within HANA, the HANA vector engine, also available within our DataSphere as well. It's really powerful for structured data, and GraphRag really is shining through when you're talking about structured data. This is how it looks within our DataSphere environment. The graph builder, you'd be able to see everything that's connected to everything. So in this particular case, we are looking at like all the products that are actually connected to the planning optimization. And also, you'll be able to look at all the views that are also connected and everything. So you have the entire lineage. It's massive. You have GraphQL where you'd be able to retrieve the data. You would never have to kind of go manually jump from node to node to see what is related to what. But SAP data sets are going to be available for you inside in a graph structure, but you would also be able to provide and build your own ontologies as well. With all of this, I want to just give you one customer example that actually leveraged all of these tools or most of these tools and kind of built their own architecture, their own application. So that's Vodafone, right? Vodafone built their finance advocate use case with us, and they actually brought in very specific, SAP-specific finance use case. This is for the asset restoration obligation, in short, ARO. Some of you might be in a similar business where ARO is relevant for you as well. So they are in the telecom business. They have to kind of revalidate their telecom assets on how much is it worth every year. So that's part of their financial operation. And what they had was a challenge where a newer accountant was not able to understand the policy and not able to do the AROs better. So they built, because if the accountants get it wrong, everything downstream is going to be wrong, like your quarterly results and everything has to be corrected. So they have put this elaborate process of like making sure that it's never wrong, like 10 people kind of reviewing it or so. So what we did was we went ahead and built this tool for them so that the accountant can go ask the question directly to the tool, and then it gives them the absolutely correct result that they can kind of go and leverage it. This cut down the time for ramping up the newer accountants or junior accountants drastically, and also cut down the number of tickets that ever have to be created. This is something for you to think about. If you ever have a use case or a problem where you would have to kind of have a lot of these approval process and checks, not because of regulatory complaints, but because of lack of knowledge with your junior accountants or employees, this is a great tool for you to kind of go ahead, and similar tool is to build for yourself, right? So I'm not going to go into the details, but what I wanted to highlight is the fact that they just had to focus on the building the core part of it, which is the grounding, and then putting that into the vector store, and then users are able to ask the question. But what is very important is everything else that needs to be there is already there in BTP. For example, if a junior accountant logs in and is trying to do a posting, if he or she is not allowed to post because of all the security restrictions that you have in your S4, that is already carried over to your application. Imagine building or rebuilding this in a non-SAP environment. Rebuilding these authorizations. Is this person allowed to post? Is this person allowed to post on specific account type, right? So all of this is what BTP provides. This at a very high level helps you to understand that you focus on the core problem, everything that you expect, which we call non-functional requirements, right? Security, authorization, and all of that, that comes with it. That kind of is going to be very challenging for you to build in a third-party environment. So a quick video about the story. So this is
from finance operations. At Vodafone, aim to achieve accurate, robust, and consistent accounting treatment across the global organization to ensure reliable financial reporting and regulatory compliance. The GenAI Hub solution we've co-developed with SAP on the BTP platform is guiding our accountants on IFRS accounting policies. Short term, we are skilling up our teams with relevant accounting knowledge, making business information easily accessible and consumable. In the long term, we expect to see reductions in audit costs and fewer potential disputes. Our co-innovation with SAP has proven to be a highly productive collaboration, giving us fast access to advanced technology and at the same time accelerating the time to market. Overall, this is allowing us to optimize financial processes, increase profitability for continued success.
So that was Vodafone. So even if you are not sure about where to start, we are there to help. So Mike is there, I'm there, so reach out to us. We'd be happy to sit down with you to identify use cases that kind of we can shape it up and help you to kind of start small, prototype it and see if there is a value for your end users, right? And then kind of scale it up as well. So that was AI, but we didn't talk about the build platform or the build piece of the BTP platform that kind of puts everything together, right? All the CAP applications and the application runtimes and everything. I'll quickly run through the entire portfolio of the build. So what we have is with build, you have low code, no code, pro code, as well as choice of language. You can develop in Java, JavaScript, and ABAP as well. And you would be able to have seamless integration into all our LOB and all our SAP products, right? So that's given. Principal propagation, so a user that logs into your application is pushed all the way to the LOB applications and our S4 system so that the authorizations and everything that's maintained on your target system are respected. The users don't see the data that they are not supposed to see. Right? And also, we have the automation tools as well. So you would probably have heard about the invoice automation and all the automation tools. So we have a very robust tool, again, very tailor-made for SAP world to kind of build it as well. And to host and deploy this, we have the work zone. So you would be able to kind of build the app, build a Fiori, UI5, whatever UI you want, and then kind of get it up and running in the build. And then obviously you have Jewel embedded. I'll quickly show a demo on Jewel as well. So we call this Fusion development because this gives you the tools for both your business as well as your developers to kind of build together. The low-code environment, which is the build apps that we have, would let you build applications without having to have much technical knowledge. Pro-code environment, Java, ABAP, everything, you do have everything at your disposal to build a really awesome app. And within the deployment option itself, you can build in stack or as a sidecar architecture. So you do have choice. And last but not least, you have a full stack in terms of database, front end, back end, all the way to authorizations and also in hosting it in work zone as well, right? One of the cool innovations that we have done here is we have included Jewel, an LLM-based application development tool. So within Build, you would be able to launch Jewel and then start building applications, starting with data model, right? So you open Jewel, and then tell it what you want to create, right? So you can just paste a text that says, I want to create a loyalty program or loyalty management application that helps me kind of capture how my customers are purchasing and then award points every time they purchase, right? It just goes ahead, thinks for a while, and then gives you the cap model, all the entities that you need to have to build this application. You can change it. You can ask it further follow-up question. But if you think this is great and good enough for you, you just kind of just go ahead and then take it up. And once you have built your model, then it also helps you to write business logic, right? You can go here and then say, hey, I wanted to write the logic, right? So you open the services.cds, and then you just open up the Jewel again. So here you would be able to kind of give it a name on the application logic. So this is basically every time somebody spends 100 euros, you give 10 euros, you give them 100 points, right? So that's the logic, and this should be awarded every time a new purchase order is created. So you just have set everything, and now you're just going to write the logic saying increase the customer loyalty points every time they spend 10 euros, right? So now it's thinking, it's going to give you the JavaScript code for it to kind of put that logic in. So it will give you in a minute. It's thinking. And the good thing is you can override, ask it to regenerate, include complex logic as well, and then makes it really easy. I mean, this is something that we have seen over and over again. We are just building it into SAP environment too. Now there is the logic. Now the last piece is obviously you have to get the purchase order data from your S4 system. So that's where the third-party connections come in, right? Our external connections come in. So here we are actually deploying it before we go into the external connection. So you immediately go deploy and run it, and then you'd be able to see all the customer information and all the purchase order information that we have just created. Because it also creates sample data along with your build code. So it doesn't bring up an empty application, but with a sample data set. So here you see all of that, and it's just done in a matter of minutes, right? I mean, this is really powerful, the way the technology is progressing and how we are bringing that into an SAP world. This is awesome. The last one I wanted to just highlight is you'd be able to kind of connect it back to your SAP systems. This is very important, as we know, right? So here you'd be able to locate all the APIs, and specifically the purchase order APIs, bring that in, boom. You'd be able to kind of bring the purchase order information directly into your system. So I have some customer stories. I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to say we have a lot of stories and the values that customers have got based off of how they have built the system. This is across all the different portfolios. Last but not least, we do understand that you also have a lot of investment on the Azure side, right? So here, what we are doing is we have built over over like 35, 40 different architectures that actually complement with your Azure investments. It's not like this or that, but together, right? Mike is going to talk about a lot of how we are bringing Azure services as well as our BTP services. Here, we are using Azure Front Door to make sure that your services are highly available, right? So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Mike to talk about the data and analytics and how that plays a critical role and how we are partnering with Azure.
Thanks, Shiva. All right, let's talk a little bit about data and analytics. As we all know, AI has a voracious appetite for data, right? And as a result of that, we need a way to integrate SAP data into your greater enterprise ecosystem. And that's one of the things that we've been working at SAP very, very hard on. In terms of our data strategy and what we have SAP Analytics Cloud, which of course we're embedding AI into. And in fact, we could show a demo on that a little bit later. As well as we have what we call DataSphere, which is our tool for being able to model your data and be able to provide self-serve access to your users to be able to come in and create data models and allow them to build applications the way they want to build it. And then finally, we have SAP HANA Cloud, and as Shiva indicated, we have a vector database engine which was recently released into that. And what's really compelling about that is that our development teams internally at SAP are taking advantage of this vector engine in order to put vector data into the applications themselves. So in many cases, that semantic, all the semantics that are included with that become a very important part of being able to build very compelling applications. And so when we talk about data and analytics, one of the scenarios I see a lot of our customers thinking about is I need to get the data out of SAP, and in many cases, they say, well, let's just go ahead and move it all into Azure Data Lake, or let's move it into BigQuery, or let's move it into one of the other hyperscaler data sets, which we do believe is an important use case. There are certainly things you can do with that, but there's also, it's very important that you have, with DataSphere, that data warehousing engine that provides the reporting platform for all of your SAP application functionality, right? So, and of course, out of the box, we provide tons of pre-built content. We have data models built in DataSphere that you can leverage. We have pre-built reports that are there, and you don't want to go build that yourself. As soon as you disconnect the data from SAP and move it to the hyperscaler, a lot of times you lose those important semantics, and that becomes a really critical thing. So having DataSphere in the middle, having SAC for your reporting on your systems, it becomes a really critical thing. The architecture that we're looking at for this, there's some really important things that we're doing when it comes to integrating with Azure and allowing Azure to work with us. Number one, we've got native connectivity built into FedML that from Synapse, you can do FedML calls for high-speed access into HANA itself in order to egress data and do the things that you need to do in order to do FedML, ML queries, right? And that's a really powerful capability. We also have the ability to do data federation, and federation is one of those areas that at SAP we've been doing a lot of work on to try to make it in a scenario where you don't necessarily have to copy the data, or maybe there's scenarios where you need real-time access to that data and you need transactional consistency. Having federation both directions, either back to your SAP data source or federating to the hyperscaler data, becomes really important. And so trying to be careful about copying data is one of the things that I have conversations with my customers every day about. Make sure you're careful what you copy and why. A great example of federation is if you think about PII, right? One of the things that we're all concerned about is being GDPR compliant or CDPR compliant, meaning if somebody comes to your organization and says, I want to disappear from your systems, you're responsible for making sure that that data does actually disappear. And in SAP, we do a good job of that. That's one of the things we do very well. But as soon as you egress, for example, PII out, you're now responsible for creating all of the downstream capabilities to make sure that that user disappears from your system. That's painful. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to do that kind of work. I would rather leave that to SAP. And so what we do is we provide federated access. And within DataSphere, I can say, I want this PII put in as a federated query. In other words, I don't replicate the data out. Some of the other data can replicate, but I want to leave some data in SAP because I want to make sure that it stays secure. Those are things that we can do with federation that really make for a very compelling data architecture. Finally, the other thing that we do, in addition to federation bidirectionally with Synapse and with DataSphere, is we provide the ability to replicate data in near real time. One of the things that I talk to my customers about all the time is AI doesn't understand data latencies. If a user's going to come in and ask a question, they want an instant response. They don't want to be sitting there wondering, oh, well, yeah, but the data didn't get updated until 8 hours ago, right? So being able to replicate data in real time and being able to drop that data onto ADLS Gen 2 or onto OneLake is one of the key capabilities that we have in order to do that. And from there, you can use Azure Data Fabric, right, to replicate that data into Synapse if that's what you want to do. But we can get the data out in near real time. When the Parquet file shows up on the file system, it triggers an event, ADF picks it up and can then ingest it into Synapse. And it's a fairly fast process to do that. So this is one of the key architectures that we've got. And again, if you need to replicate the data, and we fully understand there are times you need to do that, we do give you the ability to get the data out with DataSphere, and it is our recommended architecture for how you do that. If you want to learn more about data and analytics, lots of places to get started. I'm just literally scratching the surface here. And again, if you guys want more information, we're available afterwards to talk about your data strategy and what it is that you want to do with it. So let's talk about Integration Suite. So one of the things that we've recently released with Integration Suite is this capability of what we call an edge integration cell. And an edge integration cell, what it gives you the ability to do is to drop basically on an Azure Kubernetes environment, I can run an edge cell service that runs behind the firewall that connects to either your PCE RISE implementation or your S4 implementation that's running in your own environment. However you have it deployed, we can put that edge integration cell right there, and instead of having to send transactions out to the internet in order to do integrations, with what we are doing with Integration Cell, we can remote the calls inside your firewall so the integrations take place at that point. That makes it very easy to develop your integrations and to deploy them to where it makes the most sense. And in a lot of cases, it makes sense to put it behind the firewall. And that's one of the things that we've recently released. And the reason this is important is when we start thinking about AI, this particular demo is showing how we can actually create integrations using AI. I can actually use natural language to define what I want my integration to be, and what this system will do is go in and actually generate the project and actually show you what this integration looks like. So what you'll see on this next screen is the actual replication integration flow that was created, and this integration flow has already built out because of what we've defined in that integration, using natural language, has tried to go ahead and build it for you so that you don't have to, it's going to save your developers huge amounts of time in terms of building those integrations. And of course, if you also want to know what other integrations are available, we have the Accelerator Hub, which gives you access to lots of pre-built integrations that already exist that you can take and modify. All right, so one of the things, and I want to leave everybody with this, I get asked these questions all the time. A lot of people are struggling to understand, where do I use BTP and where do I use the hyperscaler, and what are the governance models around that? And it's not a simple thing, because in some cases, it makes sense to do it in BTP. In some cases, it makes sense to do it in the hyperscaler. But what I want to do is I want to talk about generally what BTP does really well versus what the hyperscaler does really well, or what Azure does really well. If you take a look at BTP services, and I've categorized these in generic terms, right? You look at a database, you look at a data lake, you look at application integration, you look at ETL pipelines, and you look at all the different technologies that are there, there's almost a one-to-one mapping, right, between BTP and some Azure equivalent, right? Very common. But so a lot of our customers come to me and they say, so Mike, why would I use BTP? I can just use Azure for that. And the point is, and we get it, because it costs money to make an investment, a platform investment in my organization. It means I've got to skill up. It means I've got to have the right people. I have to have the right processes. It's not an insignificant investment, right? And so we get that. But there's absolutely a place that BTP plays, and there's absolutely a place that Azure plays. And generally speaking, what I find that BTP can do that Azure can't is, because we own the underlying platform and because it's integrated into our applications, we're not limited to native APIs in terms of being able to do that. So a lot of people connect to our APIs to egress data, right? We're not limited to that. I'll use an example with Integration Suite. Integration Suite has native RPC-based adapters that talk directly to your S4 environment. Those are only adapters that we could build. That's not something that we're going through public APIs to do. You're going to find lots of scenarios like that when you look in every single BTP service. There are native integrations and things that we do that the hyperscalers can't do. We also build it to underpin our SAP applications. So what that means in a lot of cases is that we run in the native VPCs of where your applications actually run. And VPCs, virtual private clouds, right? This is a networking thing, right? And so I don't have to go out to the internet and back again in order to get things done. BTP gives you that ability to do that. Generating real-time events. Hopefully, a lot of you have been looking at event-driven architectures and have built out large-scale event-driven architectures. And of course, when I look at Azure's capabilities with Azure Event Grid and with Event Hub, very, very powerful tools. But the problem with them is that from within the SAP application itself, those events have to originate in the application. And so the only way to implement something like that, for example, with Azure Event Hub, would be with a polling architecture, right? Where you're polling the application and asking, has anything changed? Has anything changed? That's not a good architecture for doing eventing. because things can change in 5 minutes, right? If you want a real-time infrastructure, we give the ability now within S4 to go configure real-time events and say, publish this event out. And it shows up immediately in Advanced Event Mesh and pushes it out. And at that point, if you want to take those events and route them over to Event Grid, you can do that. Those are things that we've built integrations with Azure to do. The other thing that we do is our product groups coordinate. So for example, when I talk about build process automation, which is our, if you think about what it does, it's screen scraping, right? It's like what we do with Azure RPA, right? And Azure RPA is a great service. But what we do in BTP that's specific is our product groups coordinate so that if the user environment changes, in other words, the UI changes, that propagates to our bots because we stay in tight coordination with that. So what that means is if you roll out a process automation project and the UI changes, if you're doing it on build process automation, it's not going to break your app if the UI changes. That's a huge thing, right? Our product groups talk to each other and they coordinate and they make sure that when we release things that we do it in a consistent way. Our BTP is also designed to funnel requirements back into SAP products over time. That's one of the things that I see happening all the time is that our products are very, very good at our product groups watch how you implement BTP. And if we see that there's things that are happening commonly, we take that feedback and we oftentimes roll that back into our product as a feature. So it becomes a way that our customers can innovate and add unique value, but if we see that it's happening a lot, maybe it's something we need to roll back into our products. And then finally, and this I'll go back to what Shiva indicated earlier, business content. Pre-built reports, pre-built integrations, pre-built things that you can just go to SAP, the Accelerator Hub, and download that content and use it means it's an accelerator that gets you going very, very quickly. It's not something that you have to go build and write a lot of code to do. And so what I generally tell our customers is a generalized governance model emerges. Use BTP for integrating and extending SAP applications, and use Azure for integrating and extending to the greater enterprise ecosystem. And a lot of times I'll talk about the concept of data or application gravity. So if the application you're wanting to build is 90% on top of SAP, build it in BTP. If it's 90% outside of SAP and you just need a slight data feed from SAP, build it using Azure Stack, right? Go that direction. You need to, but generally speaking, if you're connecting to SAP applications, you're going to go through BTP to do that. And I want to make sure I highlight at a very high level what this looks like. At the lowest level, obviously Azure provides all that infrastructure for us, right? And I know what Azure has done in terms of laying network pipes, building data centers. I mean, my goodness, it is such an incredible platform that our applications run on top of. And with BTP, it gave us the ability to run on any hyperscaler. So we can run on Azure and allow you to leverage that if that's your standard platform internally. And then, of course, on top of that, we have our applications that run, or at least pieces of our applications that run on top of Azure. And then on top of that, we have BTP that acts as an integration layer, right? And on top of that, as Shiva indicated earlier, we have joint reference architectures that we build with Microsoft where we give you the recipe of how to build applications that move over between SAP and Azure. And then, of course, Azure represents the non-SAP ecosystem. They're very, very big over there, and we understand that that's where they play. But when you're building things on top of SAP, that's where you do it, is in BTP. So with that, I want to leave you with, we have the tap room. I don't know how many of you have been able to find that. You should come check us out over there. Both myself and Shiva at 3:30 will be available to have more conversations. And for no other reason, it's free booze, guys. I mean, come on. You guys got to come there for no other reason than that. So, come talk to us, get connected, and also know that there's other presenters as well that are going to be there at certain times. If you guys want to register and come over, we'd love to host you there. Okay, what we'd like to do, I know we've only got about a minute left, but questions. And please come up to the microphone because this is being streamed, so that way we can capture your question if you have any. Any questions, any thoughts, comments? Was this interesting? Good, good, good. Well, thank you, and both myself and Shiva will be around after. If you want to come up and talk one-on-one, we're happy to do that. Shiva, any final comments or thoughts?
Yeah, the last point I want to leave you with is, if you're not sure where to start, we can help you.
Yes.
Right? Either on the data side, AI side, anywhere in the BTP stack, we can sit with you, help you out, and we would be honest and say, hey, this doesn't make sense to build in BTP, right? Just go build it in wherever it makes sense, right? But wherever you think, we think SAP can add a differentiation, we definitely would recommend. So we'll be happy to sit down with you.
Yeah. And we talk to a lot of customers, and we see what their strategies are, and a lot of times we can also talk to you about what other customers are doing and what their journey has been like, because we know it's a journey. It takes time, and there's bumps along the road, right? So we're here to help, and whatever we can do, we'd love to help.
Yeah.
So with that, I think we've got 3 seconds left. How's that for ending on time? How many of you guys have ever seen presenters actually end on time? I mean, what the hey? So, all right, thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.